So we're doing this series here on hot seats for our hot seat tracker for head coaches, and we thought that Billy Napier would be a good place to start. It's been talked about a lot. Let me start off with this because I think it's only fair to say this. Now, I talked about this last week actually on my Around Your SEC show. I led off with Billy. Joe, there's a very good chance that Billy Napier could be 5-2 going into the Georgia week. Very, very good chance that he's there. And a lot of people, like they did this year, remember when they went into the game with Georgia in Jacksonville, the largest cocktail party. We thought, man, maybe Graham Mertz, they're playing okay. They're 5-2. Yeah, they're about to be 5-3, but could they upset an LSU? Could they upset this team? Could they upset that team? You know, at the end of it, when Jordan Travis went down, that game in the Swamp, a lot of people were like, well, hey, man, could they upset Florida State? Is this the week that Florida State goes down? But, Joe, the last 6 weeks of the Florida schedule, I think is the most brutal scheduling that I've ever seen. Florida State, Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, Georgia, all in there for Billy in Florida at the end of the year. I'm going to say something that's not going to make sense. Florida has a potential to be the best 5-7 team maybe ever. And I don't know if it's technically created equal if Billy is 5-7, that I'm not going to say it's not a bad year. It will be a bad year. Don't get what I'm saying wrong. I just think he's got so many hurdles that he has to overcome that is he the hottest or the biggest coach with the hottest seat? Yes. I don't know if he makes it through all of this. But I got to say, Joe, he might have the toughest schedule that we've ever seen in college sports or college football, maybe ever.
The schedule that he has to face is brutal. And one of the things that I've heard throughout this cycle that's been brought up on a number of college football shows that I listen to is that they possibly decided to hang on to Billy Napier this year because they didn't want to throw a first-year coach into the heat of having to deal with the schedule. Like that would have been so brutal. There's also speculation that the recruiting class that he had that was so good, they didn't want to risk losing a lot of the guys that were committed, especially a guy like DJ Lagway, who is a program changer. That is a guy that completely changes the direction of a football program. He is that gifted of a quarterback prospect. If I were to put this on the scale, 1 being not going to get fired, 10 being definitely going to get fired, I think it's a 7. And here's my reasoning. Really hard schedule. Very, very tough final stretch, as you talked about. It is going to be an uphill battle for him to get out of that. I do think he has bought himself time, though, and it needs to be acknowledged. As much as we clowned on him on signing day for losing a couple kids, the final recruiting class and the guys that he signed were significant. That class is going to be really good in a couple of years, and one could argue,
if they stay,
if they stay, the administration could be argued, we got all these really good recruits. Do we really want to start from ground zero yet again and hope that whoever comes in is able to get these kids to stay? Do we really want to risk getting picked apart like we just witnessed happen with Alabama where a bunch of kids hopped in the portal? Do they really want to risk that happening? I think his efforts in recruiting have shown signs of progress, which is why I don't want to go all in on the 10. I think it's likely he does get fired, but I think there could be an argument made on let's be a little patient because he stepped into a team that Dan Mullen did not recruit at this level, and he had to completely start from scratch in order to get there. He is not Hugh Freeze, who's going to get this thing running as quickly as possible. Billy Napier does not have head coaching experience in the SEC. It was going to take him a little bit longer to get where he needs to be, and I think that is where that argument could be for him potentially staying if they go 6-6, maybe even 7-5 if things go, really, really nicely for them.
Joe, if he goes 5-7 this year, he'll be 16-21 as the head coach at Florida, which is not acceptable. There's a lot of comparison between Billy to actually somebody who is a rival of Florida, and that being Florida State with Mike Norvell. But I look at Mike Norvell in his first 2 years, Joe. He went 3-6 during COVID. He went 5-7, which is, I don't even know if I want to count 2020 or 2020 for him because of all the craziness that happened. More of 2021 being his first year. but he turns it around, Joe, and goes 10-3 and 13-1 this year. I mean, if you're in year 3, you can't, schedule or no schedule, you cannot go 5-7. You gotta find a way to be bowl eligible. You gotta find a way to be 7-5 at worst. If he goes 7-5, maybe I could see a glimpse of maybe, and he recruits well. Look, let's give him one more year. I mean, they went 5-7. They're 7-5. Maybe they win a bowl game. They go 8-5. Who knows? Joe, I got to admit, I got to give this a 9, maybe even a 9, maybe even a 9.5. I just don't see a world where Florida sits on their hands and doesn't make a move if Billy Napier does what we think he's going to do.
I think where this whole thing gets so messy is the previous coaches and how quickly they've been moved on from. Like, at what point, and I understand it's the old adage of, like, at a certain point, you got to pull the plug instead of continually reinvesting into something that's not working. At what point, though, do you not try to give a guy a little bit more time than you've given the other coaches? Unless he's that insufferable of a person to be around, and that
he's not that insufferable of a person. Billy's not a bad guy.
Right. So normally that's what gets guys kicked out early, is that there's friction between the administration and a coach.
The argument with that would be, though, Joe, can you hang on to a coach that'd be 16-21? God forbid he goes back-to-back years 5-7, and you're talking about a coach that's 21-28. No, he wouldn't be 21. 21-28 as a head coach. Joe, he wouldn't have a winning record. He wouldn't have a winning record in the conference. I understand that he's got one of the hardest schedules, but Joe, I'm saying 5-7, and I think I'm being generous.
That's fair. That's very fair.
By the way, just throwing this out there, I'm giving him a win in week 1 against Miami. Okay, which I think Mario Cristobal is another guy that could fall on this scale here of, is he on the hot seat? Is he not? I look at Billy Napier. I think he's a great guy. I honestly believe he's a good recruiter and a good coach. When it comes down to it, this just isn't the place for him. It's not. I just don't think that Florida, if you're being unbiased, this is not where they need to be. Joe, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. When Florida is on, they are the most dangerous. They are most dangerous team in the state of Florida, without question. We've seen Spurrier, we've seen Urban, we've seen guys, even Dan. That 2020 year, they went crazy. Even the year before in 2019, it was one bad year for Dan Mullen, and they cut the cord. They're holding on to Billy Napier longer and giving Billy Napier a longer leash than they ever did Dan Mullen. It all depends on who you think you can go and get. And I do think that behind the scenes, those conversations are already starting to be had. I think Florida knows that he is a sitting duck. Joe, there was and Florida fans in the comments are going to kill me for this. There's scuttlebutt on social media. That's a white man's word, scuttlebutt. But there's a lot of stuff on social media about boosters not giving money to the program because they don't think Billy Napier's the guy. So,
which is so stupid, by the way. That is such bullshit to do the, oh, we don't think he's the guy. We don't really think he's the guy, so just not going to help him. Like, this is why this program and this football team has sucked for the past decade, because these boosters think they're hot shit and they make dumbass decisions like this. We know that they are the ones responsible for bungling the Jaden Rashada situation. I just feel like there's so much toxicity with this goddamn booster group with the University of Florida. They all think everybody is going to be Urban Meyer. They fuck themselves. They literally, that is where the root of the issue is. Like, we can sit here and talk about Billy not getting the job done as much as we want, and there's some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that, which is why we're having this discussion. But we got to have a real convo here, Blake, about this booster organization for Florida. They meddle way too goddamn much, and it does not get covered.
Well, that's a head coach's problem. Look, head coaches got to put boosters in their place. That's also a part of Billy's job now. You think that there's not rogue boosters at every big-time Power 5 conference or team in the country? Hell yeah, there is. You don't think Josh Heupel, we talked about the NCAA in Tennessee, you don't think Josh Heupel picked up the phone and called whoever the CEO of the Spire Group is and says, you stupid son of a bitch, what are you doing? Like,
that's a good point.
I do think that is a part of his job. But, Joe, I got to tell you this. I don't necessarily disagree with you behind the Jaden Rashada stuff. That's not on Billy. None of that is on Billy. Bet you they were letting Billy know everything that was going on, though.
Yeah.
Right? Here's the problem. I'm going to get absolutely killed by this, by my home base in saying this. Florida and LSU are a lot alike. And after 2 years of winning a national championship, LSU fired Ed Orgeron for being sub 500. I could make the argument. That LSU, from a national title standpoint, I can make the argument in the last 20 years from Florida, from a national title standpoint, LSU is a little bit more because they've had a little bit more stability here for longer periods of time. Joe, Florida's got 2 in that same period. LSU's got 3. So my point in all of this is, how do you see Ed Orgeron a couple of years ago won a national title? 2 years? He actually didn't even make it 2 years. He made it a year and a half. And their athletic department said, hey, you just beat Florida, so what? You're out. You cannot sit on your hands in this conference.
That's a good point.
You just can't. And I brought this part up earlier. I don't think it's the boosters thing. Look, they've missed on head coaches, okay?
A lot. When was the last good the last good hire they had was Urban Meyer?
I thought that they needed to give Dan another year.
That was stupid.
That was very stupid. I mean, he literally was just playing for an SEC championship game.
He got wait. This needs to be. I just to throw this in there before we. Kyle Trask was talked about for a period of time as a Heisman finalist. Kyle Trask. I'm going to say that one more time.
I don't think Trask was that bad as a college quarterback.
He wasn't even a starter in high school, and he managed to get what he got out of it.
King.
Or was it Kyler? No, it was Derek. It was Derek King's high school.
Derek King that was the quarterback ahead of him. Joe, a lot of people wouldn't start.
All I'm saying, though, is that what he got out of the talent group.
Look at you going
Florida,
after quarterbacks again.
I'm just saying they moved on way too damn quick. Imagine if they let him coach Anthony Richardson and it wasn't Billy Napier. Just imagine what that would have been.
They did. He
was a freshman, though. I mean, he looked really good as a freshman.
Oh, brother. No, he didn't. I mean, he ran really good. Joe, he ran really good.
No freshmen are there's no good freshman quarterbacks. They all are like that. He played way better than expectations.
I was at a game where Anthony Richardson tried to throw a hitch route, and it legitimately hit 16 rows up in the stands.
He was raw as hell. Okay, all right. We're getting distracted here.
But I understand your point there in reference to moving on from Dan. But I just look at Florida as a place. Joe, I keep saying this, and if I say it too much, God bless it, it's going to come true, and the whole entire SEC is going to hate me for this. Could you imagine getting a coach like Lane Kiffin to be at Florida? If Lane Kiffin is realistically on the table, Billy Napier, not only should you fire Billy Napier, you should get the governor. Well, let me not say that because it's too political. You should ban him from the state of Florida for his entire life.
I understand what you're saying.
Lane Kiffin now.
Wait, but
can pull it off.
I understand that there is this desire and this want for Florida to immediately pluck the biggest name on the market. But I feel like, a lot of times when these openings happen, very rarely do we actually see that first option and that first name leave unless they have some sort of prior affiliation with the school, meaning that they played there, father played there, they were a coach on the staff for a long period of time, something along those lines. And I just also, Florida has had multiple coach openings, and I feel like they haven't gotten it right. Why would any coach really be excited about jumping into this?
Because it's Florida and people know what you can do there.
I want to add this into the fold, though. a very common thing that people say is that if you say everyone's an asshole, it usually means that you're the asshole. You know what I mean there? Like if you think that everyone's being mean to you, the reality is that you're the one who's actually the one who's at fault, and you need to look at yourself. All I'm saying here is that if we have gone through this many coaches, this isn't two.
Oh, no, their athletic department has been absolutely trash.
That's what I'm saying, is that instead of pinpointing, we got to fire Billy Napier, at what point does Florida not look inward and say, we got to start completely over? You know, we have to figure out ways that we can build a foundation as an athletic department rather than expecting a head coach of a football program to hit the ground running when the foundation is completely cracked.
But you do bring in, but the problem with that is that there's been so many really good Power 5 programs that have been fractured, okay, and the foundation has been cracked, and you go and make a big-time head coaching hire, and overnight it changes like this. I mean, I could name I could name 20 off the top of my head. Hell, I can name one of them that was at Florida. And I think your analogy about, hey, man, you can't just go out there and hire Urban Meyer every time. And you're right on that. But, Joe, I'm not asking him to hire Urban Meyer. You know what I'm asking him to hire? A Lane Kiffin. Somebody that'll get you 10-2 every year at minimum. And you know what happens when he goes there? He destroys it in recruiting in the portal. They're not. They would not. Let me not say it like that. It would be very rare when they only have 9 wins.
All right, let me put it this way. I'm only firing Billy Napier if I know that I can get Lane Kiffin. Because
if he goes 5-7 again and you have 2-3 losing seasons, you got to move from him.
But this happens so much in college football, where I think administrations fire guys and they think to themselves,
name a coach that was 3 seasons and had a losing record at a massive school like Florida that they moved on and you thought that they shouldn't have.
I'd have to. I think it's a unique situation, though. I really think that I think Florida's situation is unique because the amount of times that they've fired coaches consecutively, and then on top of after very short stints, very, very short stints, nobody has gone past 3 or 4 years, if I'm remembering correctly. But I think that there's positives, though, that can be taken away from his performance in recruiting. And also, he's got a huge uphill battle with what they have to do with who they have to face on the upcoming schedule. Let me ask you this, though. Say they upset one of the premier teams on their schedule. I don't know who that is. Do you think that would buy him some time if they go 5-7?
1,000%. Not if they go 5-7. Because that means they would lose to somebody like Vanderbilt that they're not supposed to lose to. Oh, wait, they did lose to Vanderbilt. I mean, so he had a top 5 pick at quarterback once he came in. There's not a lot of excuses. I mean, Joe, you're talking about programs in your own conference. So the year that he came in, and this is just my last point, the year that he came in and got in at Florida, Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley were the 2 premier coaches that got other head coaching jobs. That's who you're compared to.
You would know this a little bit better than me, and this is legitimately a question. Did you get him?
Yeah, I got
it. That hiring of Billy Napier, was he their first choice? Was that
Yeah, because they panicked. They thought LSU was going to get him, and they flew to Lafayette, hired him because they thought LSU was going to get him, and LSU didn't even come close to interviewing him. I'll just say this now. LSU's number 1 choice was Brian Kelly, and their fallback guy would be a guy like Lincoln. And Lincoln saying, I'm not going to LSU because Brian Kelly had told a recruit, Walker Howard, okay, long story short, and others, okay, Will Campbell, others, that he was coming to LSU. And that's why Pete Thamel tweeted it, because recruits were talking.
I'm asking this because this was prior to me like really being as deep into hosting as I am. Did they even consider interviewing Brian Kelly or Lincoln Riley or any of these premier coaches?
Brian Kelly had let it be known that he wanted out of South Bend and that Florida would be a premier destination for him. They didn't even
turn that
And
they
no,
didn't
they
even
turned him
consider it.
down. Yeah. And now he's 2-0 against him. He's won the West, and Joe, he's got a Heisman Trophy winner. What does Brian Kelly do with Anthony Richardson?
Oh, he's a first overall pick if he
And
plays
you
in
know
that
what?
offense.
He actually probably comes back this year.
Yeah. Yeah,
He
could
probably
be
would
argued he would have stayed longer.
He would have stayed longer. And the truth is, Joe, they would have been 9-3, 10-2. That's the truth. And so you look at a place like Florida, Joe, it's not, there's no excuses.
Okay, I understand that. And to be a little bit more clear here, sub 500 is not good enough. That's probably what I should have been a little bit more clear in saying when I mentioned the Lane Kiffin thing. But you brought up Mike Norvell, and I remember Mike Norvell coming into year 3, and everyone was like, we got to get rid of this guy. This guy is going to stink. Florida State's going to be really bad. And they showed so many positive signs in progress on offense.
Well, yeah, they
showed
went
so
10
many
and
positive
3.
signs. They were a really good team.
If Napier goes 10-3, he's not getting fired.
Okay, right. I'm just trying to I'm trying to bring a comparison though here.
There is no comparison.
I think that there were a lot of really young, good football players on that Florida team last year that were just really inexperienced. There are athletes on that team.
I will say this now. A
lot of freshmen and sophomores that had to play last year.
Hey, now I will say this. Billy got a defense now. But here's
an underrated DC too. That's what I'm trying to get at is that
also
like this could come together.
Bringing Ron Roberts. But here's the thing too. Remember this now. When you go out for a special teams play and you have 2 players with the same number and you're losing, those issues magnify so much because you're getting your asses kicked.
If I remember correctly, did they get rid of their special teams coordinator?
I hope so.
I'm looking it up.
God, I hope so.
Let's see if they did. They call him the game changer coordinator. Oh no, he was there last year.
Can I tell you this before we transition to Sharon Moore? There is no program that potentially will have 3 losing seasons back to back to back that could go from the slumps of hell to being a tier 1 top tier SEC program more than the Florida Gators. Nobody. Mississippi State can't do it. Vandy can't do it. A&M's not there. South Carolina can't really do it unless they got Steve Spurrier from Florida. I mean, Shane Beamer's not going to get them there. The right coach gets in Gainesville, nighty-night, sweetheart. Night-night.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, it is a historically good football program, and there's a rich history of recruiting and funding to that program.
Joe, I was a senior when Tim Tebow brought his happy Christian ass into Baton Rouge and was in the stands. It wasn't just Tebow, though. Percy Harvin. Who was the Brandon Spikes? Aaron Hernandez.
All right.
They had killers. Lewis Murphy.
Okay, you didn't have to use that descriptor.
I mean, am I lying?
No, you're right. They recruited at an elite level.
Like dudes that would knock your head off. Joe, remember when they played, was it Oklahoma or Ohio State in the national championship game, and the safety comes down along the sidelines and kills a man damn near, knocks his head off. Yeah. Florida, that is Florida. Florida is athlete on top of athlete. They will smother you with speed, and they'll out-physical you. That is the University of Florida. Anything below that is not their standard. The Florida standard every year should be playoff or bust. That's the bottom line.
They got a lot of work to get back to that, though.
And it ain't going to be with Billy Napier. All right.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number 1 source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.